Cuts and Circ, I take the opportunity to welcome everyone in this hall for our ICRR launch. And we just start now with our inaugural session, Inclusiveness in Digital Economy. For the session, I request Mr. Pradeep Mehta to please come on the stage, Mr. Gopal Krishna Agarwal, Mr. Ashok Kumar Gupta, and Injeti Srinivas. I would like to regret on behalf of Mr. Rajiv Chandrasekhar that he would not be able to join us because of parliamentary proceedings and commitments. And I would request PSM now to please come on stage.
View, and let me join Nidhi in welcoming you all to this event, which is about the release of a regular report that we produce every 2 years on looking at the competition and regulatory scenario in the country, probably the publication of its own type. And so far, we have produced 7 editions, and this event is to release the 7th report of 2019, which is completed very recently. What has been occupying the minds of people, particularly whether you look at many fora, is the online world, the new platform economy or the digital economy or the disruptive economy and so on. The fact is that more than half the world today is online. The internet economy is changing lives in the developing world also, in a manner which was never imagined before. Things have been happening so fast. Innovation fueled by digitalization is creating innumerable income generation and job creation opportunities, while also stoking fears of abuse of power, discrimination, and increasing inequalities. Despite the inherent capability of internet to connect and reduce distances, the barriers to free and fair trade have never been higher. Countries are increasingly considering restricting movement of goods, services, persons, and data. It's becoming another category. It's goods, services, people, and data is now a new category of things which are mobile. And not only that, what is coupled along with this is the gains of liberalization is being questioned. Today we are looking at a phase of deglobalization as such. Protectionism happening all over, including our own government. At the same time, countries are looking to moving beyond mere GDP as a metric to measure economic growth and are keen to focus on clean, sustainable, and inclusive development. This is guided by the SDGs, which is again another very major global governance issue which is occupying our debates at fora. Now, developing countries, particularly those who have not yet attained reasonable per capita income levels, like India, or have not been able to benefit from global value chains as yet, may face immense pressure from these developments. They may not be more in a position to rely on open markets for rapid economic growth. As I said earlier, protectionism is increasing, deglobalization is happening, so markets are not going to be as open as they were in the past, especially in the decade after the WTO came into being in 1995. Now, what is again a big challenge to them, if you look at the discussions on climate change, is the need for green economy. How do you grow without disturbing the environment anymore? Now, if not handled carefully, the years of effort towards social and economic progress runs the risk of being stalled as a result of these number of developments. What is the role of competition and regulatory agencies? Competition and regulatory regimes are typically hailed as tools to guide fair markets to function efficiently and promote economic growth. However, the form of these tools as we know today was formulated in another era. It is not yet clear if these tools can be utilized to navigate effectively, increasingly online and digitally enabled environment we live in today. Or do they need to be altered, or is there a need to design an altogether new toolkit? These issues are subject to intense debates in advanced economies. Obviously, these debates occur in the context of evolved institutions effective government-citizen engagement, and institutionalized practices in such advanced economies. And let me take the opportunity to thank both Shri J.T. Srinivas, Secretary Corporate Affairs, and Shri Ashok Kumar Gupta, the Chairman of Competition Commission, for having agreed to come and speak as part of that engagement as I was speaking. Also, I have the pleasure of former Chairman of Competition Commission, Dhanendra Kumar, who's been associated with us for a long time as well. Now, despite having experience and expertise on their sides, the rich countries are far from reaching a consensus on some of these issues, such as, did competition agencies in advanced economies act late in applying merger regulations, thereby reducing the possibility of competition in the online market? Or was there a lack of evidence in terms of consumer harm? Now, if you look at consumer welfare, this is another issue which is being debated widely. The definition of consumer welfare in as much as it is in the West is quite distinct with that in the developing world. In the developing world, consumer welfare is not just price. In fact, the US jurisprudence often is mostly guided by price, whether it's a merger or what have you. But in the developing world, we have to look at equity as well. I mean, as I said in the beginning about inequality. Now, therefore, the question arises, is consumer welfare restricted to availability of products and services at low prices in short term? Or should non-price factors and possibility of price increase in longer term be taken into consideration while analyzing the level of competition in online markets? Has big tech become too big to fail, and thus intermediation should be conferred utility status, or users are merely rewarding them for their innovation and risk-taking ability? So what is the special case of the developing countries? While advanced economies continue to deliberate, we in developing countries cannot sit idle and wait for them to reach a consensus. We also cannot blindly adopt the principles, concepts, and regulations formulated by them. We'll have to devise our own tailor-made solutions. These issues need to be tested on unique capacities, requirements, and objectives of each of the developing countries. And each one of the developing countries will have to devise their own path to foster the online economy, which are also dealing with challenges of generating adequate jobs or adequate income generating opportunities. When compared with advanced economies, competition and regulatory regimes in developing countries are still in infancy. Similarly, good regulatory practices, there are many countries which are still legislating a competition law, developing world particularly. Now, even good regulatory practices like repository of regulations, structured public consultation, notice and comment period, cost-benefit analysis, and sunset clauses, amongst others, have not been institutionalized as yet in most of the developing economies. But at the same time, it is encouraging to note that developing countries have started to consider some of these issues seriously. Quite recently in India, the government constituted a competition law review committee to review the Competition Act in terms of what experience has been gained, including to deal with the kind of new things which are happening. The committee, which was chaired by Shri J.T. Srinivas, submitted its report to the Ministry of Corporate Affairs on July 26th last year, recommending amendments to the Competition Act. We do hope that the Ministry would place the proposed amendments in public domain for the purpose of any further consultation. Though, of course, there was a very vigorous process of consultation within the committee itself. Yet, at our end, as a civil society organization, the endeavor has always been to generate deeper debate and outcomes on important issues. That ICRR 2019 is one of the steps in that direction. This is the report which will be released. This year's theme, digital economy hitting the reset button, could not have been more apt. We hope that this volume dedicated to competition and regulatory nuances for the fast digitalizing economy will serve to aid our collective efforts in addressing the challenges posed by the digital economy. With that, a brief note. With that, a brief note on ICRR issues will be in order. As I had said, ICRR is a flagship biennial publication of Cuts and Search, presenting a compendium of policy-relevant research on the status of competition and regulation in India, spanning across sectors and cross-cutting contemporary issues. I do hope that all of you would enjoy reading the report. Thank you very much. With that, I would like to welcome Mr. Gopal Agarwal, the National Spokesperson for BJP.
Thank you. Pradeep ji, Injeti Saab, or other panelists and friends. What in the budget I would just like to focus is that the finance minister had spoken a lot about the new economy. And in our pre-budget discussions, which the party also had with various stakeholders, particularly on the IT sector and other digital telecom sector and other digital economic sector like e-commerce, data privacy, all there, that there were a lot of issues that are arising because of certain rules, regulations, or where the government has to work on the policy initiatives. I think it's an evolving sector, and in the budget this year, the finance minister has focused on the way disruptive technologies require a new dynamics on the competition law, or how they can make a big difference in when the Prime Minister also talk about that we have to service about 137 crore population, how technology can help a big difference in the lives of the people. Small changes like Jan Dhan account have created a big difference. Even on the GST platform also, the GST network, the whole thing of integrating from the registration to the assessment to filing of returns, refunds, they have created a big difference on how the business is done. Even e-assessment, then faceless appeals, all these initiatives are important where new technology is driving the economic growth. So the government laws have to be accordingly talked about, and in the budget, the finance minister has quite eloquently talked about the funds that the government plans to invest in this sector, whether it is the quantum computing investment, setting up of this private data centers, which has been very much appreciated, and and then majorly, if we go into IPR in industries like pharmaceuticals, automobile, etc., they had certain reservations with regard to this intellectual property right issues, the time taken for any license to be issued, the amount of complications, and no speaking order whether it is rejected. So lot of reforms are required on the IPR segment also. That was one of the major demand from the industries, particularly on the automobile and on the IT sector, IT enabled services, and even the pharmaceutical sector. So the budget says that we have to focus on streamlining the whole IPR initiative, and it also talks about the early life funding, the seed capital that is required for these new ventures. And on the startup ecosystem, the issue is that more than 90% of the startup ecosystem fail. So there are issues with regard to resolution where whenever there is a genuine failure in these sectors. So how to segregate the genuine failures from the where there is an element of fraud or diversion of the funds or mismanagement. So on the IBC side also, the changes is required, which the government is well aware of. That IBC, when the objective of IBC was focused on resolution mechanism and putting up an efficiency, or where there is a mismanagement, the changing of the promoters. But more focus has gone into liquidation. So those changes are also required for this segment, particularly on the MSME sectors also. Certain changes that the government has announced that the MSME sector can go for SARFAESI or other resolution mechanism with a lower turnover requirement. So I think these changes have been made into the initiative. The government is focusing on the digital economy through whether it is through investment avenues or through BharatNet. These kind of initiatives government is focusing on, and government is coming out with policies with regard to e-commerce, data privacy, data localization, profit transfers, global profit transfers issues are very important. The demand of the industry has been that all these policies have to be on level playing field with regard to the policies that our IT industry and our this IT enabled services industries face with regard to Europe and American laws. And if we have looked into those laws, their laws are quite stringent in comparison to domestic industries. So these are important initiatives which require certain protection for our domestic industry. At the same time, we have to also create a level playing field for domestic industries, and protectionism cannot go on for a very long period. Though FTA, we are talking about renegotiating on various FTA measures, but it cannot go on for a longer period. The industry has to work on building their competitiveness, and laws which require a transparent mechanism. So these are some of the things that I wanted to put. The digital connect with the Gram Panchayat, etc., are big investment opportunities for the new players into these industries. So I think these are some of the important issues where new economy focus can come. Gig economy, technological issues are very important for the future growth. India has to prepare for those challenges. They need lot of investment, hand-holding from the government. Government is well aware of those challenges, and the amount of service difference that technology can make in the life of the common man, whether it is government e-market platforms or this initiative like trades, where it can make a big difference for the working capital requirement of small businesses. All these initiatives are important for the economic ecosystem that the country has to move forward, and these are the focus areas. And today CUTS has organized this important discussion that will definitely help us understand more on these issues, and the roadmap can be more clearer where the government should move. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I am delighted to participate in this inaugural session at the launch of India Competition and Regulation Report 2019. I congratulate CUTS and CIRC for carrying out policy relevant research and publishing report on the status of competition and regulation in India ever since 2007, spanning across sectoral and institutional dimensions. A continuous effort to bring evidence from research to policy making is important, and this report is a great endeavor in that direction. As the theme of this year's digital economy hitting the reset button on competition and regulatory governance suggests, this volume is dedicated to competition and regulatory issues for the fast digitalizing economy. My felicitations to CUTS and CIRC on the timeliness and the topicality of this report. Friends, we are witnessing the emergence of the digital economy characterized by disruptive innovation. In addition to the introduction of new products and business models, disruptive innovation seeks to remove inefficient intermediaries, increases consumer choice, forces incumbents to improve in order to compete effectively with the disruption, and reduces information asymmetry, all of which lead to greater competition in the market. Indeed, we are living in interesting times of new age markets. The digital sector in India too has grown at a fast pace in the past few years and is slated to be on a high growth trajectory in the coming years as well. India's digital economy generates about $200 billion of economic value annually, largely from existing digital ecosystem. This would increase to about fivefold, that is $1 trillion by 2025. E-commerce in India itself is expected to reach $200 billion by 2026 from $38.5 billion in 2017, propelled by the increase in mobile and internet penetration, fall in telecom tariffs, and emergence of varied payment options. While the ongoing shift of markets towards a digital platform-centric configuration has opened up new opportunities, it has also posed new challenges for both market participants and regulators. Like any other market, digital markets are not impervious to anti-competitive conduct. While the competition law cannot and should not try and upend the economics that drive these markets, timely detection and appropriate intervention to correct anti-competitive practices is of key importance in these markets so that these markets remain contestable. Keeping these markets competitive is one sure way to ensure inclusiveness in the digital economy. The network effects that allow digital platforms to serve the consumers as never before provide data collection advantages to large incumbent platforms, creating massive entry barriers. These network effects can result in lock-in to such an extent that the possibility of potential displacement of market power gets severely limited. What we also notice is the integration within online markets leading to creation of larger online platforms. Another interesting feature is that users are not paying money to these platforms, they are paying an implicit price in the form of personal data. A platform with a large base of users is able to attract more users, what is known as the user feedback loop. On the other hand, it is able to explore user data to improve ad targeting, obtaining additional funds to invest in the quality of the service and attracting even more users, which is the monetization feedback loop. These loops can make it difficult for an entrant to compete against an incumbent with a large base of customers. Thus, due to these features, platform markets may be more concentrated than other industries, as most consumers would flock to larger players, leaving smaller players competitively unviable. In this context, the challenge for regulators is to set a legal and regulatory framework for digital markets that supports innovation and also provides for appropriate safeguards to prevent harm to competition and consumer welfare. The peculiarities of multi-sided markets set them apart from the traditional market paradigm. In any case, the mere fact that one firm has entrenched market power in a particular industry is not condemned. The way that market power is used would be subject to competition scrutiny. In cases involving dynamic competition, the Competition Commission tries to strike a balance between short-term static efficiencies and the long-term gains that arise from innovation. Assessing technology sector issues requires an understanding of the underlying technology and a comprehensive knowledge of market developments. A nuanced assessment based on the facts of the case and the market and technology in question is therefore the strategy that the Commission has adopted in the analysis of antitrust cases involving digital economies in India. The Commission recently conducted a market study on e-commerce in India to engage with industry and other stakeholders to get greater clarity on market developments, emerging impediments to competition law, and formulate the Commission's enforcement and advocacy priorities in relation to e-commerce. The study points to an increased intensity of price competition across the sector studies. Online trade has also led to greater price transparency. Sellers, service providers, and platforms are tracking competitors' prices and adjusting the price levels in response so as to remain competitive. While the idea of dynamic pricing strategy is not new, the internet has transformed the way price information is disseminated. A broad and growing range of products, strong logistics and delivery network are bringing consumers onto the platforms. The indirect network effects and data-driven positive feedback loops contribute to the growing importance of online platforms, and most sellers and service providers in India, both in goods and services, now depend on intermediary platforms to access consumers online, as consumers increasingly rely on these platforms to search for and purchase products. The key competition issues that emerged from the study pertain to alleged lack of platform neutrality, unfair platform to business contract terms, exclusive contracts between online marketplace platforms and sellers and service providers, platform price parity restrictions, and deep discounts. Many of these issues would lend themselves to a case-by-case examination under the relevant provisions of the Act. Nevertheless, the bargaining power imbalance and information asymmetry between platforms and their business users are at the core of many issues that have come up in the market study. Based on the findings, the Commission has recommended self-regulation by e-commerce marketplace platforms with regard to search ranking criteria, collection, use and sharing of data, user review and rating mechanism, revision in contract terms and discount policy. The Commission, under its advocacy mandate, has urged the e-commerce platforms to improve transparency over certain areas of their functioning that will help in bridging information asymmetry, which in turn can positively influence competition not only on the platform but also between platforms. The objective is to promote competition on merits and to foster a sustainable e-commerce ecosystem in India. In the absence of self-correction, the instrumentality of the law is always available with the Commission, but given our advocacy mandate, the market study identified certain areas of concern that we wanted to flag to e-commerce platforms. Having said that, in the last 1 year, the Commission has sent 3 cases related to digital economy for investigation after prima facie finding evidence of anti-competitive conduct. One related to bundling of services by a major online service platform. The second investigation deals with issues of exclusive agreements, unfair platform to business contract terms, platform price parity restrictions in the accommodation service sector. The third and the most recent deals with issues of exclusive agreements, platform neutrality, and deep discounting in smartphone e-commerce. I would like to highlight the role of antitrust regulators in reviewing mergers in digital economy. Possible detriment to innovation is becoming an increasing concern in merger review cases in technology markets. There has been a rapid ascent of innovation effects as a factor in merger challenges in matured jurisdictions. If the merging firms are each other's next best substitute, or the merger is likely to affect diversity by eliminating an independent innovator, it may invite a closer scrutiny by the competition authority. Furthermore, dominant technology companies have been acquiring disruptive firms in adjacent markets that have the capability to rival the incumbent dominant enterprise in terms of its product offerings. Data is emerging as a key intangible asset that can drive certain acquisitions in the digital space. It is argued that transactions in digital markets are often driven by a motive to access the target's data. In such a transaction, the target may not have a huge asset base and at times even zero tangible assets and also no significant turnover. In such instances, the target's turnover may not correctly reflect its value. Accordingly, there have been recent concerns as to whether the existing merger control framework in India is sufficient to catch these transactions involving targets in the digital market with a low value of assets or turnover but are of competitive significance. Asset or turnover based notification thresholds may actually not capture transactions that fall into a blind spot in the current legislative framework. Hence, it is our endeavor to introduce an enabling provision in the law so that those transactions which fall under the de minimis exemption may get referred to CCI if their deal size is above a certain threshold. The deal value threshold is also among the recommendations made by the Competition Law Review Committee that was constituted to review the adequacy of the existing statutory architecture of the competition law. The committee also reviewed the existing provisions of the Act to find out whether digital markets would require a new antitrust dispensation, or the existing framework of the competition law is robust enough to deal with the issue. The committee held that the existing principles and rules of competition law are sufficient to address competitive practices emerging in digital space. However, certain recommendations were made by the committee to make the act sounder. These recommendations, along with introduction of deal value threshold, also included covering hubs in the assessment of hub and spoke cartels and widening the scope of anti-competitive agreements to cover all kinds of agreements. Further, in the interest of speedier resolution of cases, which is particularly critical in the context of fast changing digital markets, the committee has recommended additional enforcement mechanisms in the form of settlement and commitments. Antitrust should not be seen as a panacea for all sorts of issues ranging from privacy to data protection to income inequalities. There are many issues emanating in these new age markets which certainly require some form of policy intervention. We realize that the issues of data protection, privacy, and consumer protection may be intertwined with antitrust in the case of digital markets, thus warranting coordination and consultation between the antitrust regulator and other relevant regulators. There could be potential abuse of dominance cases, which might also involve a breach of data protection rules. There should be appropriate remedies which address both anti-competitive practices, and the goal of well-functioning markets can be achieved in conjunction with sector regulator, leaving no room for confusion for the stakeholders. The key is to ensure that there is consistency and continuity in our approach towards competition and regulation to avoid any unintended and undesirable conflict, and to provide a stable and predictable regulatory environment to the industry and well-functioning markets to the consumers. Before I conclude, let me reiterate that competition law attempts to preserve an economic environment in which innovation can flourish inter alia by prohibiting conducts that mute rivalry, impede entry of, or adversely affect the innovation ecosystem. In innovation-driven markets, like in any other market, firms may have anti-competitive incentives and abilities to stifle new challenges to their hegemony. Thus, antitrust enforcement is not only necessary, but has a significant role to play in innovation-intensive markets. Having said that, the Commission is fully conscious of the need to keep in view the specificities of these markets and the innovation dimensions of the business conduct in question. We in the Commission are aware that the consumers benefit from the competition through lower prices, better quality, and a wider choice of new or improved goods or services. Therefore, the CCI will continue to focus on those type of conduct that are harmful to consumers. This regulatory philosophy is in line with what the Raghavan Committee report had observed. The committee recorded its view that India was in transition from being a protected economy to becoming a liberalized economy in a globalized world. A modern competition law was required for achieving efficiency in resource use and maximizing consumer welfare. This mandate has been clearly spelled out in the Act itself. Let me conclude by saying that in the fast-moving world we live in, we need to constantly benchmark ourselves against the best, learn from other jurisdictions, and optimize the effectiveness of our enforcement. We at the Competition Commission of India constantly strive to achieve this. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gupta. Let me take the opportunity to welcome Mr. Nitin Desai. He's President of the Governing Council of ICRR's Institute for Regulation and Competition. And more importantly, he's the guide for all the competition regulation report we've done since the last 7 years or 8 years. So, Mr. Gupta, the study that you put out on e-commerce was, I think, an excellent step. There might have been some criticism about it, but I thought it was excellent that the Competition Authority is setting out issues which are important to build up a narrative so that people are aware. I mean, it's not an issue that Competition Authority is, as you rightly said, it's not just an enforcement authority, it is also an advocate for competition. We're also happy that Mr. Ashok Gupta has also written the foreword for this report. Other than the fact is that Dr. Arvind Mairam in the past, Mr. Dhanendra Kumar have also contributed their forwards. So we're pleased to have them here. May I request Mr. Srinivas?
Shri Pradeep Mehta, Shri Ashok Kumar Gupta, Shri Nitin Desai, Shri Gopal Krishna Agarwal, ladies and gentlemen, at the outset, I would like to compliment Sri Mehta and Cuts for organizing this seminar on such an important matter of the impact of digital economy on the competition regulation framework and the challenges it throws up and how we meet those challenges. But before we come to the digital economy as such, we'll all have to recognize that the competition regulatory framework in our country is still very nascent. It is still at a very evolutionary, evolving stage. That is because that till early 90s, we basically had a planned economy. The state decided what to produce, how to produce, for whom to produce, who will produce, and we had basically the licensing regime and quota regime, and therefore competition was not really a driving force. And we have seen how after adopting a market-oriented economy structure, we have all benefited. I mean, it's not that market economy is necessarily, only favoring one segment and not favoring the other segment. There could be some market imperfections, but they can easily be managed through interventions. And that's precisely the reason you have a regulator. And it's market which will have, the invisible hand of the market will actually bring in all efficiencies and everything. But there could be issues here and there which need to be addressed. So that is the overall context, and all of us have experienced this. That I remember, still very vividly that in 1991 or so, I was the private secretary to a minister for communications, and a telephone, getting a landline telephone in Delhi or Mumbai was a nightmare. You had to wait for 10 years. People were ready to do anything to get a telephone. And you know now what it is to get a telephone, okay? So these are the type of things, and you had the ambassador car and Fiat car which would change one model to another model by changing the color of the tail light or putting some leather this thing to the steering. And today you see what sort of choice you have, what sort of new technologies are coming, and I think at a very attractive price tag also. So we have all seen the types of benefits competition has. Again, I think it's also related to the stage of economic development. I think we can't undermine that also. We are a large economy, fifth largest in the world, but at the same time, the proportion of organized economy versus the unorganized economy, it is still skewed towards the informal, unorganized economy. Now there, I really do not know whether competition and all these things matter or whether they apply. And then in the organized economy also, your domestic companies, are they global players? Or they still have to, be allowed to grow to become global players. So these are all issues which we need to see, and that's clearly reflected when we sort of replace the MRTP with the new competition law. The MRP thought that big is bad, so anything which is becoming big or monopoly, you should prevent it. But the new law perhaps does not bother about the size, so long as you're not abusing your your dominance or your power. But I think overall, if we look at, say, 2009, effectively our competition commission became, fully operational. So it's about 10 years we have seen the competition commission. And in these 10 years, it has really matured, because we see that they have been fairly effective in dealing with abuses, especially in sectors which are having a lot of public interest, involved, like pharmaceuticals, cement, civil aviation, real estate. Everywhere, competition commission has intervened and has brought in some very good, has given some very good decisions which have been very efficacious. Also in terms of contributing to the ease of business, because all regulatory, mechanisms will impose some burden on business because there'll be compliances and other things. The burden should not be disproportionate. Then again, it becomes, a drag on the economy. So I think there also a lot of good initiatives took place, like de minimis was one good example. Maybe when it was introduced, it was very, very important. So it said that if the assets threshold is 350 crore or turnover is within 1000 crore, then you don't have to go through this merger review. Now, whether that requires to be revisited, because in the digital economy, you may not have such at that stage, you may not have such asset value or turnover. Yes, surely you need to look at these things. So broadly, I would say that there are two aspects to this digital economy. One is if we want to be a 5 trillion economy, today when the size of digital economy, I read somewhere is about close to 30 trillion, then we will have to, promote digital economy, digitalization of the economy. And we'll also have to ensure that there is no digital divide within the country also. So there should not be something, situation where, many people cannot access the digital economy, or they do not have the capacity to interact with the digital economy, and therefore they'll be left out. So that is also a very important issue, that digital economy can also accentuate inequalities. It can also have an impact on employment opportunities. You may have growth, but is it that you will have jobless growth? Are these concerns? So these are also real issues, for us to look at and see that how in this changing scenario, whatever required new skill sets are required, what sort of people you require, where machine will replace, human, machine will replace the man, and where, new opportunities will come, where you will require different skills to be able to perform those jobs. That aspect also has to be seen. As far as the topic is concerned, that do we need to press the reset button? I mean, that would be dramatic. I really don't think you would have to press a reset button, but maybe you will have to tweak something here and there to be able to meet some of these challenges. And many of these issues were also looked at by the Competition Law Review Committee, and it found that by and large the law in its present shape is capable of dealing with most of these issues, and which has been also demonstrated by the Competition Commission recently. I think basically when we look at this digital economy, we'll have to understand that it works in a different way. It does not really be, it's not really following the profit maximization type of approach. It is trying to get maximum market share. It wants to get deeply entrenched. It wants to control the data, and thereafter in a long term it will be in a position where you cannot really dislodge it, and it will actually totally influence the minds of the consumers. Today, I don't know how many of us realize, but Google knows more about you than you know about yourself. Sometimes it's very threatening. You suddenly get an alert and say that you are supposed to go to this hotel, you are supposed to, catch this flight. And I was wondering, I never saved it or I never did anything. Then how is it that some, some person is tracking you and then, alerting you on your smartphone? So these are all issues, that information is power and how it will control. So I think those issues, like many things are given free of charge, Gmail up to 15 GB free of charge. So what is Gmail getting? Maybe getting information, your profile, your preferences, your choice, and that it can sell. So it is getting a price in a different form maybe. So how will you define a market? We'll have to have a relook at it, and that is something you will have to see. Also, I think everything is not necessarily in the competition law, as Mr. Gupta said. Recently, the e-commerce rules, which were taken out by India, I think it's a very good move, because they have very clearly laid down the rules of the game. So they say that platform cannot sell products of companies in which the platform owner has equity interest. And then you will have to have a totally transparent, non-discriminatory, arm's length type of dealings with all your sellers on the platform. Then you cannot have any exclusivity clause. You can't bind them to only this platform so that they cannot go to another platform. So I think by bringing out these rules, we have by and large sort of tackled the problem with respect to platforms. As we see, as on date, there is a good regulatory framework, and the rules of the game are well laid down. And that, along with this good initiative Competition Commission took of conducting a study, you sensitize people, you create more awareness, you educate people, you also sensitize your stakeholders, you take them along with you. And I really like the suggestion of that that advisory which CCI gave, where they said self-regulation also is very important. So I think it has to be a mix of all these things. There has to be some self-regulation, there has to be better sensitization, there should be better consumer awareness, and wherever enforcement is required, CCI should not relent, they should take that enforcement also. Last, I would say that government has a very important role. When I say government, whether it's the central government, state governments, local authorities, we actually contribute to the ecosystem of the competitive environment. And quite often, we may be breaking the rules of competition, because sometimes the way you design your policies, the way you frame your rules, sometimes the way you frame your laws also are not promoting competition. And maybe unintendedly it is actually, bringing in, it is discouraging competition. Okay, even when government procurement, about 30 lakh crore is the value of total procurement in government, and if your tender conditions are such that they are excluding most of the potential suppliers, then it is anti-competitive. So I think there's a huge requirement to have a very strong framework for assessment of competition, assessment of the economic legislations. Are they pro-competition? Are they promoting competition? Policies, rules. This is one area where CCAI will have to function, very aggressively and proactively. And at the central level, state level, and even at the local government level, we'll have to ensure that this gets percolated and it is totally internalized. So overall, I feel that this is something which is a great opportunity. More of an opportunity than a challenge. The challenges we should be able to manage those challenges, and we should bank on this opportunity and try to see that we are among the leading digital economies, and also try to see that the digital economy is, very inclusive, and it does not leave out, any segment of the society, and everybody benefits from it. I think the report which CUTS has brought out may also contain a lot of good suggestions. We are in the process of introducing, going to the cabinet to get the approval of the cabinet on the bill, draft bill that has been prepared on the basis of the recommendations of the CLRC. And I also appreciate the suggestion that we should have more stakeholder consultation. We did have the consultation in the form of the report. Report contained all the recommendations of any amendment to the current legislation also. But nonetheless, I think if there are any other suggestions, I think they can definitely be incorporated. And with these words, I thank you very much.
Perceptions of people in terms of how competitive the economy is. And we've been finding an increasing trend. So that's good marks for any government which is there. It's not only NDA, but even that time. There are distortions, which Srinivas spoke, and that is what worries me. If you look at the headlines in the last 2 days, one extremely pro-competitive measure, and another was very anti-competitive measure. The pro-competitive measure was to allow private sector to operate trains. on the railway system. That is a pro-competitive measure. The anti-competitive measure is LIC's policy will continue to enjoy sovereign guarantee. You are destroying competitive neutrality. When you open up the sector to life insurance to so many people, why do you have to then continue to mollycoddle LIC? And that is something which we had objected to long ago, Mr. Srinivas. That look, you cannot, once you decided to open up the sector, you can't. Of course, there's one competitive neutrality problem that we always have. For people like us who are traveling on a government committee is to fly only by Air India. Otherwise, you don't get reimbursed. I have a bill of 60,000 pending with the Ministry of Road Transport since the last 7 years. So I decided to give it up. Okay, here's our donation to. But what I'm saying is there are a lot of, in the sense that, thanks God, it doesn't happen in the telecom sector. That nobody is telling that, you should use only BSNL, then you've had it. Then we would, be in. But if you look at the telecom sector today, it is something which concerns all of us. Yeah, that, when the number of players are getting reduced. And if Vodafone walks out, then we'll be left with a duopoly nearly. Of course, BSNL would also be there. But these are things where we require a proactive approach by the government, and by the CCI particularly, that we should tell the government that, look, we need to continue to have larger number of players. Fine, 15 players was all, very murky sector. If it has come down, it doesn't mean that it should continue to do that. I just thought that these one or two observations to buttress your splendid remarks as well as yours. And I think it's not only e-commerce, but should continue to do studies in the health sector, for example. Healthcare sector is so anti-competitive today. Whether it is pharmaceuticals or hospitals, everywhere, consumer is being fleeced. And Srinivasa, the problem is the poor suffer the most. Today in India, the medical cost of the poor is the highest in the world. 50 to 60% of the medical cost goes to this. I mean, these are things, of course, and education as well, which is what we've been pleading with the competition authority since a long time, that these are issues where if you just did a survey, it will have an impact on the market. You don't have to even, take any enforcement action, but a similar survey like that could help. That we have a few minutes to take a question or two. Questions, please. No statements. So we'll be having the next session with
currently President of the Marketing Association and also professor at NTPC School of Business. I wanted to speak two things only. Number one, that when we are talking of consumer welfare in the digital economy, it will be a good idea not to talk about it. Because consumer welfare is a concept of protective economy. Rather, we should talk about consumer empowerment. What is your view about that? Maybe Mr. Srinivas can talk about it. Number one. Number two issue is, there are many issues which we can talk about. But digital economy also has its own stages. So can we have some issues out of the bouquet of issues to talk in the formative period of the digital economy, rather than talk everything under the sun and lose the issue? So it will be a good idea to talk about most important, urgent issues in the formative period of digital economy, rather than digital economy as a whole.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
My question is related to the last statement which you made, which was on the bill, which is being proposed to be placed before the Parliament. My question was in continuation to what you said, that would there be a chance for the community to actually give their comments on it, because no one has been able to give it on the whole paper till now.
For Ashok Gupta sir, so the CCI report released recently was a really interesting read. It just left me with one question. So in all the cases that have been lodged against e-commerce companies so far, the major challenge has been that if you include them as part of the retail market, you cannot establish dominance. And that was a question that was not addressed even in the entire survey done by CCI. So any thoughts on that? Are we going to remove e-commerce from the retail market?
Thank you.
Bill for public consultation is certainly very good. We thought we had done it through the entire report, which also gave you section wise which section has to have what amendment, but we are open to this suggestion, and we'll put it for public comments for 3 weeks or so. So concurrently, while we are we are having the interministerial consultations, we can also get public comments.
Thank you.
See, I think economy is changing very fast, and it depends how we define the market. Earlier, a couple of years back, we used to combine offline and online market, but now we are finding in certain sectors, I'm saying it is not a monolith. In certain sectors, online is becoming dominant. So we are capturing only those markets. Like if you see our cases, I mentioned about 3 cases. One was about online travel agency platform. That platform is dominant in that sector. Second, the recent case which I mentioned, here also we are taking only smartphones. In smartphones, we are finding online sector is dominant. We are not taking those sectors where the product obviously is not commanding that much share on the online. So we have to take it sector by sector. And can we combine then, can we take the online separately? Otherwise, our view will always be that offline will be putting constraint on the online and our market will be combined. But if offline is not able to put constraint on the online, then online becomes a separate market altogether.
Thank you.
I would. On this e-commerce platform, I just want to mention that disintermediation is, how do you define efficiency is an issue, because the cost cutting will come through disintermediation, but the employment is a problem that is being generated. So we have to reconcile, that's the big important issue with the growing economy that India has, and employment as a big challenge. And on the e-commerce platform, we have what I think is that we have to segregate 3 activities: a platform, technological platform for product selling, and then also doing trading with stock warehousing, etc. And the third is taxation issues, data localization from where global profit transferring. These issues are complicated issues, and these 3 activities have to be segregated, then only a solution will come. A platform for product sale, warehousing, trading, and data collection, in incorporating as a profit mechanism for that. These 3 issues have to be segregated in a regulatory framework that will ease.